And with that, we want to just thank everyone again for being here. We're really excited about this month's conservation conversation. As you all know, one Friday of every month, we invite guests engaged with different roles within the broader conservation and cultural heritage preservation community to share their knowledge and experiences with us. And today we're really excited to welcome the wonderful Rodrigo Correa-Salas, musician and head conservator at the Museum of Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, Arizona. And he's going to share his work conserving and restoring musical instruments.
So now I'm going to introduce Rodrigo. Born in Santiago, Chile, Rodrigo Correa-Salas comes from a family of artists. Prior to MIM, Correa worked as an instrument conservator for nearly 2 decades in the United States, Caribbean, Panama, and Chile. He was the official luthier of the annual Casals Festival in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and custodian of Maestro Casals' violoncello in the Pablo Casals Museum. Correa graduated from Puerto Rico's Conservatory of Music with a bachelor's degree in music education and a minor in violoncello. He later obtained an Associate of Science degree in string instrument technology from Indiana University, while doing parallel studies in cello. He has played in various Baroque, classical, and popular music groups in the United States and the Caribbean. Correa's role as a conservator is to examine, document, restore, repair, and maintain musical instruments and other objects in MIM's collection, while coordinating closely with the curatorial team and collaborating in installing gallery exhibits. And with that, I will hand it over to Rodrigo.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think these kind of lectures give us a great opportunity to learn more about the diversity of procedures in the field of conservation and restoration. So to contextualize my work as a conservator, I should start by saying that MIM is not a traditional museum. It is a guest-focused rather than a scholar-focused museum. The motivation behind its creation, besides the love for music and instruments, is the appreciation of what music does to people. The architecture of the museum, the geographical distribution of the galleries, its exhibits with representation from over 190 countries, and how the instrument and objects are displayed are integral to this approach. The museum has more than 320 video monitors distributed throughout the galleries with around 13 hours of content, where guests can automatically listen to the music and material with their headphones when they stand in front of the exhibitions. This is also complemented by signature events that are generated throughout the year to bring the galleries to life by creating in celebrating the diversity of the world's music and culture. Most of the galleries are constantly being renewed, and we have the special exhibition gallery that change content every year or two. So part of MIM's philosophy is to exaggerate the playability and acoustic quality of instruments, as well as the material integrity and aesthetic quality, and to preserve them is the best in the best possible way. So there are other instruments that have lost their acoustic capabilities. These instruments will be restored as far as possible to preserve the physical or material integrity. They will then be displayed as a historical or cultural icons representing a particular tradition or as one of the highest quality instruments remaining from a specific workshop or instrument maker. With this in mind, the approach I have with the instrument in our collection is very particular and leans a little more towards restoration. The conservation procedures we perform are varied and are mainly of a preventive nature. We have a cleaning and maintenance protocols in storage every 2 years, and weekly all the exhibition areas are cleaned. And twice a year, all the instruments on display are clean. In this way, we also keep the instrument constantly monitored. This task is performed by the collection team. There is also the Integrated Pest Management Program that is done on a monthly basis, and all the data is analyzed and put into the system. Our department is partly nourished by you, by the information you provide. Institutions like yours are the one that propose and establish different treatments and procedures through scientific research. We consult different conservation specialists. We use scientific research resources outside the museum to evaluate the instrument before making any delicate intervention or to identify some materials and its condition. And sometimes we bring specialists to the museum to carry out some restoration or ensemble intervention. The procedure performed on this rattle were to check the structural condition and stability of its internal and external materials. And regarding to the organ, below and company specialists came to ensemble, adjust, and tune the instrument. It was a great experience to be able to participate in this project. Now I would like to share some conservation and stabilization procedures that we perform. As you all know, it is extremely important to know how to store instruments and objects according to their condition, structural condition, material, and combination of materials. It is vital to know how to avoid possible harmful reactions between two materials just by using a blocker or protector such as a piece of mylar or Tyvek. And among other things, knowing how to make the best use of the storage space. Other more specific procedures such as removing tarnish to maintain the integrity and appearance of the instrument. So we have the alto horn. The polishing is done with special microfiber polishing cloth, and only if it's necessary, the instrument is polished with powdered calcium carbonate. I used to clean metal with cotton cloth, but I realized that they always leave traces of material, and these microfibers absorb and hold moisture, which is counterproductive for the instrument. If the instrument has accumulated old polish, I remove it mechanically with pine thorn or a pointed wooden stick. What I do to polish is to moisten the cloth in distilled water mixed with 0.5% detergent, and this is to give some elasticity. I add calcium carbonate to the cloth and proceed to polish. The residue is then wiped off with clean cloth repeatedly until no traces is left. This type of treatment is done on metal instrument with silver or lacquer that is in stable and good conditions. For this clarinet, I use the same cleaning and polishing procedure. In this case, I disassemble as many keys I can and remove them from the instrument. In the areas where I was unable to remove the pieces, the wood was protected before polishing. Oh, sorry. I forget the gong. We have two galleries where guests can play all the instruments, Experience and Anchor Gallery. This Indonesian gong lives in the Experience Gallery. The poor guy is bleeding and mistreated daily, as you can see. In this case, we use a mild metal polish that does not contain ammonia and microfiber polishing cloth. The idea is to keep the instrument clean, but without using aggressive products. So, condition of instrument on arrival. We have a Chinese frame drum, Banku. So cotton swabs moistened in filter and DA water we use to clean the liquid marks. Once dry, a light coat of mineral oil was applied to moisturize and maintain the elasticity of the leather. The Chinese mouth organ, the Fangsheng, was cleaned with soft brushes in addition to HEPA filter vacuum cleaner. I also use a microfiber cloth tampered with distilled water. And we have a flute from Slovakia, Tuhara. Here, the oxide was removed mechanically with a porcupine thorn and a wooden spatula. The metal areas was then polished with calcium carbonate. So we also treated and stabilized different objects and costumes from the collection. These objects and costumes help to contextualize the exhibits. This is a GP dance costume from West Papua New Guinea. Stitching open areas with linen thread to stabilize the neck. A specialist was consulted to identify the type of thread and seaward patterns. I also performed a procedure with steam to remove the memory from the folded fibers of the skirt. This Masai leather skirt, if I'm not mistaken, is from Kenya. It was treated by Miss Lauren Conway. Here, beads that were at the risk of detaching from the skirt and broken pieces of gut or sinew thread were removed. Beads were attached to the skirt using wax nylon bead cord dark brown. A mixture of original and modern beads was used to fill in looses in the beadwork. The modern beads were shaded with EcoFlow gel and teak to give them an aged look. The beads were attached with the same stitching techniques used to attach the original beads. So other metal restoration and stabilization work. For these two trumpets with falls on the bells, 1872 French soprano cornet by Antoine Cocteau, and 1928 German trumpet by Schinkelars. I use a sheet metal roller, that little tool you see in the below. It is a delicate job in which you must use force, so you have to be very, very precise in order to not leave traces in the metal. Sorry. There are several ways and tools to treat this type of faults. I think with this tool you have more control. Depending on the density, thickness, and condition of the material, a blowtorch can be used to soften the area. So this is a 1968 English tenor horn by Besson and Company. The valve slides and the main tuning slide had a lot of sediment and were stuck to the body of the instrument. I apply heat to the affected areas with steam to loosen the joints. Once disassembled, I clean the tubes mechanically with wooden instruments and then proceed to clean those areas with special mineral oil. This type of work is to improve the appearance of aesthetics. However, it might affect in some way the sound quality and timbre that the instrument produces. The sound is waves that can generate movement and vibrations. So this is an early 20th century Shen Chinese mouth organ. For this decorative cylinder, I couldn't get a bone of this dimension. I used epoxy dough called free from air and then it's a very light and strong epoxy. I cut the grooves and texture of the original. Then I dye the material with water-based pigments, and to attach the piece to the bamboo, I use wax. This way, the material does not have direct contact with the wood. And here we have a mid-20th century Malagasy valija. It's a round cedar from Madagascar. To complete the tail of this gecko lizard, I use the same epoxy. To join the new part with the existing one, I covered the contact area with a thin layer of cellulose. Then I dye the material with water-based pigments. And here we have a 19th century Chinese dulcimer, Yangqing. The curator asked me to change the set of strings because they were in very bad condition and to stabilize the red paper strips, red paper strips. I removed the strips with steam and let them dry. Then I placed the strip between sheet of plexiglass to flatten the folds. I glue the paper strips to a Japanese paper base to join the pieces together and give them a little more structure. Then I put them back in place. For this, I use pH neutral adhesive as a glue. So when an instrument has a decorative piece of paper, foil, or membrane, it is very important that these are well adhered to the surface. Bearing in mind that this instrument might be played at some point. So this is a 19th century ceremonial drum from Congo. This project was interesting. I had to do the restoration only from the front of the drum. It is not possible to access from the bottom. So I moistened the leather pieces with water and put them between sheets of plexiglass to remove the memory of the folds. Then I installed pieces of goatskin leather as a base to glue the existing leather. To adhere the pieces, I used bone glue. Once everything was glued together, I used Japanese paper to reinforce and fill in the height difference in the grooves. Then I used natural water-based pigments to stain the distorted areas. We have a mid-20th century Puno harp by Samba Bernard from Gabon, Africa. As you can see above on the left, the instrument, it looks in very poor condition and is missing many elements. It's missing strings, all the tuning pegs, and the skin is cracked. But the structure of the instrument is in excellent condition. I moisturized the skin and placed it between sheets of plexiglass to flatten. Then I proceed to glue the pieces together with Japanese paper, the remade 2250, using pH neutral adhesive as glue. After consulting with a curator and researching different sources, it was decided to make the peg in that particular shape. So in the lab, we have several materials such as skin from different animals, pieces of wood from different countries, different types of bones, ropes, and strings of different materials, etc. The dry wood I use to make these pegs is from Central Africa. These branches were used for an installation made by the curator of Africa a while ago. So, and the strings, the strings are made of vegetable fibers. Everything was jute. I glue the skin to the body of the instrument with fish glue, and then all the parts were assembled. So this is a 19th century South African Benda drum. For this project, I made a wooden structure as a frame to distribute the force from the tension generated when the cowhide was installed. Generally, I try to copy the different traditional ways of assembling instruments, but the structure of this drum is compromised as it has some cracks. I covered the drum with plastic wrap so that I could put the moistened skin on and gently tighten it. I wait like 4 days for the skin to take the shape of the drum. Then I remove the plastic and spread a thin layer of shea butter around the mouth of the instrument to give the skin some mobility when it contracts and expands. The shea butter is a fat extracted from the nut of the African shea tree. The spaces from the wooden pins were previously marked, and all the pins were installed, following the cross shape to tighten the leather evenly. Next, I prepare a thinner antelope leather strap to wrap around the drum to match the style and aesthetics of the instrument. And here we have a 19th century Yoruba drum from Nigeria. As you can see, the drum head had 2 holes, and the creator wanted to keep the original leather. We were not 100% sure of the skin type, so we decided to use a goat skin, which is very similar in textures and density for this restoration. To finish, I use natural water-based dyes to dye the leather and give it an appearance similar to the original. In this case, the drum is not a pliable condition, so the restoration was done to improve its aesthetics. And this is a Chinese Qinjiaogu drum. Was made in Han province during the Tang Dynasty, the Golden Age. The name is a little long. It's a rare Russian phosphatic splashed brown glaze toneware drum. It's a magnificent piece of art of its own, but the Asian curator decided to complete the remaining parts to give visitor better understanding of the instrument. I purchased these drumheads in China from a house that specializes in making these parts. To be in accordance with the time of the drum, I gave them an antique look with water-based dyes and powder pigments. And for the ties, I used strip of lamb leather, which I also give them an antique look with the same materials. This is a Rubana. It is an Indian lute. It's from I think it's beginning of the 20th century. So as you can see, it was a process to putting all back together. And for this, I used fish glue and some clamps, of course. And the broken areas of wood had no abrasion. In this case, the instrument had only one original peg, the one marked with red. So I make the 5 that were missing. To recreate these pegs, I use semi-hard wood on a mini lathe. Then I stained the wood with water-based dyes to match the color. After consulting several sources, I made the bridge and installed the cut strings. So this is a xylophone began 20th century from Chopi culture. Is in southern Mozambique. In this case, I had to make and install the missing resonators. The resonators are gourds. Have to clean it up, cutting, and put some color to match the color of the original ones. And as adhesive, I use hornet wax with mixed with ashes. So they used to do that kind of combination to as a adhesive. And this is a 1870s swatabout. It's an Indian lute. All strings, pegs, and bridge were missing at the time of purchase. This instrument was in storage for a while. It is a beautiful instrument, and there seems to be few swatabout in existence. After doing a lot of research, I was able to find a photo that allowed me to partially see the bridge, which was my point of attention. I finally got this picture of the instrument in horizontal position from the Egmont Museum in India. And the idea was to have reference in terms of style and ornamentation. In many cases, the general measurement and height of the bridges can be obtained according to the proportion of the instrument and the material of the string. And as you can see, I made a simplified version of the bridge for now using ebony. I made the tuning pegs out of spruce wood, and for the ornament, I use camel bone. And in the end, the silk strings were installed. According to tradition, only women can play this instrument, this type of instrument. As a note, I always make a simple sketch for the pieces, and I put it in the system as a reference. And this is an 1880 Belgian accordion. This is an accordion with a basic mechanism. When we move the bellows and press one or several keys, we allow to air pass through the different reeds to produce sound. And here I assemble the reeds in their blocks using wax, and then glue the reed blocks to the frame with fish glue. It's a beautiful instrument, and it's so simple inside. So this chapey is a Cambodian 2 double core string wood. As you can see, it was a somewhat dramatic case. However, it was very well stored and protected. Before its restoration, I had to condition the instrument to the previous repairs. The crack and breaks in the wood were quite clean, which allowed for a more accurate restoration of the instrument. To pull all the parts together, I used fish glue, then I reinforced the back with wood patches. This wood has a bridge and 2 pairs of strings. And as a note, the chapey was inscribed as Intangible Heritage of Humanity in 2016, I think so. I'm very familiar with bow string instruments. I have done various repairs and restoration, such as stabilizing cracks, gluing resonators, making bridges, adjusting instrument, French polish, and varnish work. For this type of instrument, I use a high glue as adhesive with different intensities. I have also rehair some bows from the collection. For this rehair work, I use a Mongolian horsehair. I think it's the best hair for the bows. So this is a 1825 Kemanchen, and is a traditional Azerbaijani lute. We have this example that looks in poor condition. So before intervening with a restoration like this, many options are considered. The intention is not only put the instrument in playable condition. Tuning pegs, strings, resonator, tailpipes, and bridges are indispensable elements for the functioning of the instrument like this. However, are parts that are repeatedly replaced. All these parts are repeatedly replaced. So in this case, the instrument was two main parts, a post and resonator. The post serves as a head, neck, fingerboard, and strut, and the attached resonator serves as the sound amplifier. The integrity of the pole is in excellent condition. As we can see, the resonator has several peeling areas, and the membrane is broken. Join the detached areas and installing a new fish skin stabilizes the integrity of all part of the object and prevents material movement. In addition, this will promote sound integrity, better projection, and quality. Some instruments, especially those made with organic materials, need to be active and have some tension to maintain their structure. Eventually, they need to be monitored. As a note, I must say that most of the material that are replaced in different restoration are keep for future reference, of course. And as last example, this is a 1870 Japanese flute. This Japanese traverse flute, which come from a very old Chinese tradition, was recently acquired and is in excellent conditions. Listening to the sound of flute, this particular flute immediately transports you to a landscape in front of a cherry blossom. What makes this instrument so distinctive? It is timbre, the quality of its sound. And this timbre is given by the little piece of membranes glued with donkey glue, as they call it in China, in the hole next to the embouchure. So before gluing the membrane, it has to be wrinkled so that when it is stretched, a pattern is registered and it can generate that particular vibration. The membranes was glued to the flute, and now the instrument will be displayed. So sharing with musicians and working with the instrument makers and technicians from different countries gives you a good base of knowledge and information. You learn to use different tools, treatment of materials, and manufacturing techniques. Knowing the history and tradition of different peoples, their geography, flora, and fauna helps to understand the context of a musical instrument. What each one of them represent, the materials used to make them, when they are used, and what for, how they are played, and in what kind of ensemble. So at some point, all this information filters down and becomes an intuitive tool, which will eventually help us in a practical and effective way how to deal with these sound machines. Thank you very much.